today's World Insight. The 19th Central Committee of the Communist Party of China on its 6th plenary session in Beijing since Monday. What does the meeting mean for the nation after a century of modern history in the face of global challenges? What's on the agenda?
100 years anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party, and it is time to summarize what we have gone by in the past and what is really ahead that can be mapped out for this nation to grow, both on domestic front and also on international front.
Hello and welcome to World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. The 6th plenary session of the 19th Communist Party of China's Central Committee is being held in Beijing this week. Economy remains one of the major topics. Although still working to keep the pandemic at bay, China's economy has once again impressed the world by demonstrating its resilience under pressure. The year 2021 has witnessed the CPC celebrating its 100th birthday. Many have congratulated China for its governing capabilities. But questions are also asked. What is the growth engine of China that will continue to drive China's economy? How to maintain and even build on this momentum? Let's find out.
7 plenary sessions are usually held during the 5-year tenure of each Central Committee of the Communist Party of China. The Central Committee is the party's highest decision-making body. Each plenum has its own agenda. On October 25, 2017, at the 19th CPC Central Committee's first plenary session, Xi Jinping was elected General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee. January 18 to 19, 2018, the second plenary session. Officials for the administrative branches of government were named, and amendments to China's constitution discussed. February 28, 2018, the third plenary session. A structural reform plan of the party and state institutions was reviewed and adopted by the CPC Central Committee. October 28, 2019, the fourth plenary session. The CPC Central Committee prioritized improving the system of socialism with Chinese characteristics and pushing forward the modernization of national governance. 1 year later, having overcome the initial huge challenge posed by the coronavirus pandemic, the fifth plenum adopted China's 14th five-year plan for economic and social development. The sixth plenary session, to be held from November 8th to 11th, is the penultimate plenary session of the 19th CPC Central Committee, which focuses on ideology, strengthening the party, and improving the way it works. This year, 2021, the party marks its centenary and the fulfillment of Xiaokang, a moderately prosperous society in China. Amid this backdrop, the 19th Central Committee's 6th plenary will review the party's major achievements and draw valuable lessons from it, before steering the country on a new chapter towards national rejuvenation.
For the 6th plenary session, I'm joined in Shenzhen by Xiao Gang, Director of the Institute of Policy and Practice with Shenzhen Finance Institute of Chinese University of Hong Kong in Shenzhen. In Beijing, we have Liu Baocheng, Dean of the Center for International Business Ethics from the University of International Business and Economics. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. First of all, I would love to know about your quick assessment about the significance of the ongoing political meeting in Beijing.
Well, there are a number of meetings going on in cascade, but this meeting is the most significant one in recent years because it is the 100 years anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party, and it is time to summarize what has we have gone by in the past and what is really ahead that can be mapped out for this nation to grow, both on domestic front and also on international front. And now imperatively, we have to address the economic growth, political stability, and peace and prosperity on a regional basis. So facing all of these uncertainties that is still looming large, what action China will take and what is really the roadmap the Chinese people will follow the Communist Party's leadership to go.
Professor Xiao, a lot of things going on, pandemic globally, and also have an impact hugely on the global economy, China's as well. Meanwhile, you see geopolitics, other uncertain factors. How do you think this meeting will lay the foundation for the even bigger political meeting next year?
Well, I think this is the right time to think about what are the lessons the party learned in the last 100 years, and also how to use them to deal with the future. In the future, the challenges are coming from outside and also from the inside. From outside is mainly about the challenges from the US, the geopolitical challenging, and also climate change, a lot of pressures and uncertainties on the economy. But internally, I think we also need to deal with how to use both the market and also the role of the government in consolidating our internal circulation, and also how to use it to deal with the uncertainties in the external circulation.
If you look at the latest number of PPI agenda put out today, it is the highest for the last 26 years. Certainly that is going to transform to the eventual CPI. So as an economist, Professor Xiao, what do you make of the latest number? What does that mean for China setting the consensus for the future?
Well, I think the U.S. has printed so much money, and inflation in the U.S. is quite high, at least for a while, and that will spill over around the world. So China also has to deal with it. So in a way, we need to keep the flexibilities to allow price to adjust so as to allocate resources, but also trying to deal with potential inflation for at least in the medium term.
Let me add a little bit on it, because we do see that the Chinese economy is also facing a tough challenge if you look at the performance of the last 3 quarters. And now we are also facing a new challenge in the inflationary factor, because the raw materials, particularly the mining industry, we are tightening up our environmental control over a number of industries in order to deliver a better homework for climate change. And now we have to use a very tough balance between environmental quality and also the current and temporary quality of the economy.
You talk about the balance. Both of you mentioned that word. I think it's a very significant one, should we say, the balance, both the global agenda and the domestic agenda, the economic agenda, environmental agenda, the carbon agenda, just the list goes on. But one of the things, if the PPI is rising in such a way, Professor Xiao, as an economist, so there's much less room for stimulus packages, whether it's for Chinese economy or for others. So what would that mean in terms of the government's capability to adjust?
Well, I think, in fact, oil prices are actually going up, partly because of disruption of global supply chain, and also because a lot of industries are in adjustment. For example, the new energy are surging ahead, and some traditional energy, they have to become very costly. So I think it's crucial to maintain the flexibility of price, and also to maintain adequate liquidity so that the economy can adjust naturally. The role of government are still very important, and certain stimulus are still crucial, but it has to be in the the so-called key sectors, which is going to lead the future green and inclusive growth. The infrastructure sector, which is supporting the green growth, For example, the new energy and the electrical car and the solar, panel. A lot of these sectors they need to basically pass the critical scale and the mass so that it can become cost effective. And so in that sense, we still need the stimulus. It's just that the directions is going to fit the climate change agenda and also the inclusive growth agenda.
Now we also see in other parts of the world, Professor Liu, for example, the US is going to put out its own CPI number. Now, many expect that to be also higher than earlier, which means there's likely to be a global-wise inflation as a result of raw material price rises. So how do you see, this global factor having on China's own careful planning of its economy from now on?
Well, despite of all the roaring claim for decoupling, the world is still highly interdependent, particularly between the two biggest economies. So therefore, the fusion effect and also the diffusion effect between the two economies are being highly experienced. And we do see that the US is printing a lot more money with more stimulus package. It's not only there to support the job and the consumption level, but also to support the future growth by giving more subsidies to those cutting edge or new frontiers. And so all of these are good in plan, but whether they are scheduled on the right time and whether they take into consideration the reaction of other economies. So that's something that they need to deliberate on. And now, given the U.S. impact and given the dollar's value, that is still most popular one across the globe. So China definitely feels the pinch by the glut of the U.S. dollar. So whether China is going to meet the headwind by printing more money to really diffuse such sort of influx, I do not think the Chinese government or central bankers are prepared to do that. Because we really wanted to keep the monetary policy more stable, and we really wanted to, as Professor Geng mentioned, that we even if we really offer the government subsidies, that's more targeted to certain identified industries instead of flooding the Chinese market.
Professor Xiao, as you may know, about the pandemic globally, there seems to be ever increasing capability to contain or at least to deal with COVID-19. Both you have the vaccines, even though their numbers are coming up these days in terms of infected, you also have special treatment pills that have been announced by certain pharmaceutical companies. So overall, the impression is that our ability as a whole to deal with COVID-19 will be rising, but that's not the end of it. At this point, a lot of businesses and industries are thinking about what's going to happen post-pandemic and what's going to happen during this quote-unquote recovery period. Professor Xiao, what do you think are some of the key areas China should really grasp and pay attention to closely during this process?
Well, I think most importantly, we need to keep our own growth steady. So in that sense, we need a lot of flexibilities of our internal economy so as to deal with uncertainties from outside. And the uncertainties can be positive and negative, and both could create disruptions to our domestic economy. So I think this is really the time to leverage on both the forces of market and also our government, because government also can influence a lot of infrastructure projects. And that is something which during crisis, during transitions, we can use. Yeah.
I do agree with Professor Xiao because you have to manage to stand on our own feet. The creation of the dual circulation, which creates a lot more confusion around the globe, is there to answer this question because the domestic circulation becomes a pillar That means that we have to stand more firmly on our own feet by the national self-reliance over number one, over its food, and also over other utilities. And you always have Plan B or even Plan C against uncertainties that is going on around the world. And now how we can really look at the future, because this is the beginning of the 14th, the 5-year plan, and how we can really support some of the cutting edge technologies in those industries, and how we can really amplify the application of it. For example, 5G has been in the pipeline for the last 3 years at least, and now how we can really put it into use for the Internet of Things, even for driverless cars, and for consolidating a number of industries. And so we are doing pretty well in controlling the pandemic through the information technology, but a large potential needs to be untapped for those emerging industries.
The structure change is quite disruptive, and that's why this is the time to really look at the short-term issues to make sure that in the short term, we have enough liquidity, flexibility, and market forces. They can guide us through this transition period.
Earlier, when the geopolitics increasingly plays a bigger role in terms of China looking at the world, there has been a lot of talk about whether that is just a short-term phenomenon. But a year from then, it seems that things thus are settling down. There's more clear consensus among the Chinese public about the kind of challenges and opportunities that China is facing. So what would that mean for China's overall plan, and also for the policymakers during this year's important political meeting to set the stage for next year? Professor Liu.
Well, to maintain the economy to grow on a controlled and steady pace, this is something that all people would expect, and this is really a foundation for many other ambitious programs that can be rolled out. So therefore, to achieve minimum 6% of the economic growth, by taking away the inflationary factor. So this is really the solid delivery the Chinese Communist Party has solemnly pledged to the Chinese people. And the other is that how we can really look ahead and to give people a better prospect about the future. So the technological innovation and its application, as I mentioned, is the one, and the other is the regional stability. And now, how to address the global issues, both with the primarily with the United States and with Europe. And hopefully that we are able to defreeze the CAI, the bilateral investment treaty with Europe, and hopefully we can really have another round of negotiation with the U.S. on economic and trade collaboration. But one thing that is also very stabilizing is that the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, is going to take place. And the fact also China has formally applied for the membership within the CPTPP is also a signal that China is playing a more proactive role in stabilizing its own economy and also with its neighbors.
Okay, so you already gave me a very detailed answer, particularly from the trade aspect, but it's not just about trade, because this political meeting, when it comes to the party's political meeting, it's really about the general direction. So Professor Xiaogang, I want to come to you on that, about the general direction. Once again, about the consensus. Earlier, geopolitics shocked China, shocked the Chinese. How come a relationship between China and the United States that have been established and maintained and nurtured through generations of Chinese and Americans suddenly experienced such a discrepancy? And now, do you think the Chinese have come to the realization of what it is exactly the nature of China and the US, and what would that mean for the public consensus to moving forward together?
Well, I think this long-term issues about the U.S.-China relation now is much clearer than a few years ago, and both sides recognize clearly that both needs to cooperate, but also will have to compete. So in that sense, I think the most dangerous time has already passed, and there will be a lot of opportunities to really work together on cooperation, but also competition. Competition. I think what is important is to lay out the rules of the game. So that's something which I think, in terms of the long-term and big issues, we already achieved a lot. But I think in the short run there will be still a lot of volatilities, and that's something we need to deal with over the next year.
Well, let me let me disagree to the point. I think that we do notice that there is a widening divide. Given the national sentiment between particularly the younger generations across the Pacific. So you see that a popularity poll with China in the United States is getting on the low side. And also you see that the Chinese younger generations are getting more and more politically correct by, pointing fingers to the United States and by offering reprimand and even condemn to whatever is going on in the United States. So therefore, this really requires a far longer time to heal and repair.
Another point about the ongoing political meeting is China's role on the international stage. We earlier at the latest CIIE, China International Import Expo, the world's largest import expo, and that is being held in Shanghai, heard from both the Chinese president and also other Chinese top officials talking about China's determination to open its market and also to open its gate to foreign investors. We heard that many times, but right before this political meeting, we heard that again. So what does that mean in terms of China's approach to the world, and also in terms of China's role in global governance? As you may know, at the later weeks of the year, there will be the 12th ministerial meeting of the WTO. Earlier week, China just celebrated the resumption of the lawful seat into the United Nations, and the list goes on. So what will be that role, and what will be China's way of dealing with the world? Professor Xiao, your take.
Well, I think China is very clear. China offers opportunities to the world in economic development, and also China is not going to interfere with other countries' politics. And I think it's good that the U.S. already recognized that now they are not pursuing to change the Chinese political system. Instead, they want to compete with China, but kind of trying to get more favorable advantage. So in that sense, I think that China already passed the most dangerous period because both sides, China and the United States, and also other countries, recognize that China is the opportunity for economic development, global climate change, and also inclusive growth. So in that sense, I think as long as we continue to open, it's very much likely to win the support around the world, including some of the more progressive American investors and citizens. So I think we have a lot of work to do, but I think the situation is improving.
Domestically, we opened our door and we harvested huge success, and also we contributed to the global growth by having trade and investment with the rest of the world. And globally, particularly since we joined WTO, we are still in a very high learning curve as how we can really learn to play by the rules. And also now, China is taking a more proactive role in participating regional and global rulemaking process. So that we are better able to get integrated with the global community, and a number of disputes can be dispersed through joint consultation and also rule binding process.
Liu Baocheng, Xiaogang, thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. That's our discussions on the Chinese economy. That's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, search World Insight. Check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of the team, thanks for watching. Bye for now.